When you go to companies and your message is, can you hire my interns? And you're just like asking for this one-off favor. Can you hire my
Yeah.
interns? You're just not really developing these super strong partnerships. But when you come to these organizations and you ask them, hey, what are the things that you're working on? What are the challenges that you're facing? What are some of the opportunities that you're trying to take advantage of? You're all of a sudden going to get a whole bunch of different project ideas. That's a stepping stone for them to come in to start working with talented students who are learning this material. That's the stepping stone to that employer to go, wow, that was amazing. I want more of this. And now our institutions have developed a really strong relationship with that employer. Okay, now did you know? Let's introduce you to career services because now you can run internships, these hackathons and case competitions as well.
That was Dana Stephenson, co-founder and CEO of Riipen, an experiential learning marketplace that connects colleges and universities to companies through projects that build student skills and relationships, and at the same time help companies find talent, get ideas, and make progress. We had a great conversation about solving the need a job to get experience, but need experience to get a job conundrum, and doing it in a way that levels the playing field for students and employers and helps students find their purpose so they're motivated, engaged, and resilient learners. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Connected College podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Felix. I've helped more than 100 colleges and universities change what they offer, how they operate, and how they're organized to enable student success. And if you're a leader in higher ed and you think that the silos and separations get in the way of student success, then this podcast and my book, The Connected College, are for you. We're here to learn and work together to bust silos, question tradition, and forge partnerships so that students feel connected to their college, their community, their coursework, and their careers. Welcome, Dana. I'm so excited about our conversation on experiential learning and the role it plays in student success.
Thanks for having me, Elliot. Happy to be here. Excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Riipen, how you got started, what you're up to today.
Yeah, Riipen is an experiential learning marketplace. We connect students to companies through short-term skill-specific projects. Students use these projects to gain experience, professional connections, build up a portfolio of skills that get verified by employers, and they get to leverage those portfolios to land the jobs they love. And companies and community organizations use it to gain fresh insights from the next generation of leaders and decision makers and really identify a talent pipeline for upcoming roles in their organization. We work mostly with higher education institutions. So that's our core, really with embedding project-based experiences into the curriculum. So working with faculty members to transform their courses into work-based learning courses with these project-based experiences with real live client engagement as part of it and collecting real feedback from industry throughout, creating these really powerful feedback loops for educators to help continuously improve and adapt their curriculum and align it with the needs of industry and set their students up for success. I'm sure we'll have lots of time to talk about all of that. But we also do a lot of work in co-curricular capacity as well. Micro internships, do some work in the K-12 space. We do continuing education, so a lot of reskilling, upskilling programs, micro-credential programs. We're big believers that micro-credentials deserve micro experiences, and everyone deserves to get experience alongside their education to land meaningful employment, to be able to contribute to their communities and live fulfilling lives.
Landing the job you love sounds pretty great to me. And if I'm not mistaken, you're the classic entrepreneurship born out of a university story yourself, right?
That's right. So as the story goes, we started this company out of university. We were students ourselves. We were obviously facing this student experience conundrum. How to get a job without experience, how to get experience without a job. Many of our peers were facing that same problem. My business partner and I just took a little bit of a different pathway. So we worked in high school, we took a year off, took semesters off to work throughout our university career. We were a little bit older than most of the people in our program by the time we got there. We did have a little bit of work experience. Getting that first internship co-op experience was a little bit easier. Of course, we didn't face some of the barriers that some of our peers faced. But that's what really got us on this path as we realized not everyone has the luxury or the connections or the time to take the same pathway or the desire to take the same pathway that we took. Lots of ups and downs and lots of figuring things out, but everyone deserves to have experience. Everyone deserves to get that experience early on in their education pathway. Why wait till the end of your 4-year undergrad to get your first capstone experience working with a live employer, or until the end of your degree to get your first internship to set you on a path? Why not get those earlier? Why not have them start at lower intensity types of experiences and then scaffold those up as you go, gain career clarity, gain more professional connections, really understand what motivates you, what excites you, and then be able to leverage those to land again the job that
Land the
you'll,
job you love.
there
Yeah.
you go.
I think it's so important. And what I love about, speaking of loving things, what you mentioned, you used the word everyone a bunch. And I think the idea that you're leveling the playing field by expanding the access and opportunity to experiential learning. So students are building this portfolio of skills and experiences that helps them land that job, and not just the ones that already have massive social capital or whatever it might be. But I love the kind of marketplace meritocracy component and leveling component. And the other thing about everyone, you probably have better data on this, but one of the things I cite in the book and elsewhere, there's this great survey from Wiley's State of the Student survey a couple of years back, where 81% of students said it's very important to work on company-led projects, and 30% of faculty offer them. And it seems like what you all are doing is you are trying real hard to work with institutions and close that gap to bring the 30 up to the 81.
That's right. And I think you can speak about the leveling the playing field across many different stakeholders and across the entire ecosystem. And that's really how we like to think about our platform, is it is like an open, shared, collaborative living ecosystem where people are exposed to each other, best practices are shared, and people learn from each other and connect with each other. And that just creates this enormous virtuous circle and continues growing and growing. But the leveling of the playing field, if you think about it, yes, to your point on the student side, students at all different years and ages, lifelong learning early on first, different types of institutions, geographical barriers. A lot of students who are attending smaller rural institutions don't necessarily have access to the same employers that you might have in a larger city hub. So how do you break down those geographical barriers? But you also have to think about this on the employer side. We work with employers of all sizes, all industries, all types. And often one of the biggest challenges that we've noticed in this space is that higher education institutions are fairly good at engaging the larger companies who have the infrastructure, who have the connections, who have the campus recruiting teams, who are super motivated in getting out there and building their talent pipelines. But what about all the small and medium-sized businesses and micro businesses and nonprofits and community organizations who are desperate for talent, but they just don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the connections, the time to design these with best practices. And they face a lot more barriers than these large organizations. And so we spend a lot of time really leveling the playing field, ensuring that we can set up that infrastructure, that we can share those best practices, that we can help facilitate these experiences with our higher education institutions. So it's not as big of a lift on these smaller organizations. And that, we believe, is one of the biggest things that's going to help solve the supply and demand challenge. I'm sure you've seen the research that came out from Business Higher Education Forum, with the supply and demand gap, over 8 million students looking for an internship, and 3.6 million students only got one. It's a massive gap. But if you can bring more of these small businesses, micro businesses to the table who have these really amazing opportunities for students, and opportunities for not only for students to get work, to get experience, to get their skills validated and get mentorship, but also to see the impact of their work, to actually make contributions to these organizations that will be implemented and see those implemented. That's how you build confidence. That's how you build this confidence that students can go out there and articulate these skills to the employer or the job that they love.
I love how you're closing that gap. And what an interesting problem where supply isn't finding demand. There's also the Gallup research that only about 40% of students do internships, and it's only about 25% of first-gen students. So on the one hand, you have this employer demand, and on the other hand, you have the student supply, and they're just not meeting each other very efficiently, to both students and employers' detriment.
Totally. And I think, this is my own observation and not backed by any evidence at this point, except for just the success that we've had up there. But one of the things that we find that's just incredibly interesting is that when you go to companies and your message is, can you hire my interns? And you're just like asking for this one-off favor. Can you hire my interns? Can you hire my interns? You're just not really developing these super strong partnerships. But when you come to these organizations and you ask them, hey, what are the things that you're working on? what are the challenges that you're facing? What are some of the opportunities that you're trying to take advantage of, or something topical? Hey, AI is out there. What are you doing for AI? How are you implementing that? How is AI affecting your organization? That starts to bubble up. He's
Hmm.
like, guess what each one of those ideas is? It's a project. And all
Yeah.
of us, we can help these organizations get all these projects out. It didn't take much. If you go to the same company you just asked an internship for, they went, I'm too busy. I don't know if the time. I'm not sure if I can set up 40 hours a week for 16 weeks for a student. And then you ask them these kinds of questions, you're all of a sudden going to get a whole bunch of different project ideas. That's a stepping stone for them to come in, to start working with talented students who are learning this material in a safe environment. Student and the employer, it's on a huge
Yeah.
lift on the side. And all of a sudden, that's the stepping stone to that employer to go, wow, that was amazing. I want more of this. And now our institutions have developed a really strong relationship with that employer. Okay, now did you know? Let's introduce you to career services because now you can run internships. There's actually these hackathons and case competitions as well. Would you be interested in that? It's just a really great way. In fact, I will say some of the institutions, especially for the listeners who may not be aware, Canada is huge in co-op. That's where we're from. That's kind of where we got our start. And every school is like Northeastern, or at least trying to be like Northeastern. And many, I would say, are beyond Northeastern in terms of being well known for co-op.
Yeah. Waterloo and such. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of the institutions out there who have been doing co-op for a long time in Canada have realized that one of the only ways left to really effectively attract more employers and build these kinds of relationships is to start with the project-based model, is to attract employers through these projects, get to the employers who are currently doing co-op, and then convert them to co-op employers because they're doing the project and keep them engaged.
So I'm hearing maybe three legs of a stool in terms of what success looks like. It sounds like it's a level playing field. It's landing the job you love, and it's doing it at a more bite-sized scale where supply and demand can better meet each other because your students are solving real problems for real people and they're gaining confidence. Is that your definition of student success, or what would you add or
Yeah.
change from that?
Love what you're saying. And I think just honing in on the flexibility.
You can say that's all terrible also too. Putting it out there.
I totally appreciate. Thank you for saying that. And I think those are really important aspects, and really appreciate the flexibility because that really our focus. We've got to meet the students where they are. We've got to meet the employers where they are. There's no one size fits all. We need to create different types of experiences for learners at all different points in their learning journey, the lifelong learning journey at this point. Because let's be honest, like more and more workers reskilling, upskilling as AI and
Yeah.
and technology continues to change roles faster and faster. I would really add to student success just developing motivated and engaged learners who have learned through their education pathway how to learn, how to unlearn, how to relearn, and that are ready to thrive in life and in a career that's going to be ever changing. That's the world that we are living in today. I feel like this is what I was saying that over 15 years ago when we first came up with this company. And like, I look back to that, and I think it was moving at a glacial space compared to now. And so this sort of being able to really understanding how to learn, relearn, unlearn, being comfortable with ambiguity, with uncertainty, having that resilience, and then just really being able to find your purpose. And I think all of that fits into student success. And I'd say all that fits in really well with career readiness being a big part of it. And the last thing I guess I'll maybe mention on this is you mentioned social capital. I just think this is something that we really need to be part of leveling the playing field. Obviously, we really need to be investing in ways to help support learners of all backgrounds and geographies, building out that social capital because it pays off in dividends. The amount of research coming out showing how much that pays off in dividends throughout their lifelong career is immense.
So student success is students who find a purpose, who have resilience, who are motivated, who are engaged, who have built the relationships and the social capital. And then the way we get there is with a more level playing field where students can land the jobs they love by engaging in bite-sized, project-based learning experiences that come with flexibility and help students and employers alike.
I think that's dead on. And I think experiential learning just has a huge role to play in achieving student success.
And experiential learning is a beautifully broad umbrella term. Do you have a handy way of segmenting it or along a spectrum? Is it time, or give us a kind of a flavor of what falls underneath that?
You mentioned the University of Waterloo earlier, and they've got a great framework out there.
So I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, really good frameworks out there. And there's some really good work happening at the state level. We've seen some really good stuff coming out of Colorado and looking at the full spectrum of experiences. And experiential learning, I think, is the big bucket. Everything fits into that, from job shadowing, simulated experiences, case competitions, hackathon, all the way up to these more authentic and live engagement, project-based experiences. Of course, project-based experiences in themselves can be 10 hours long over 2 weeks and can be 360 hours long over 1 year. There's just an enormous amount of flexibility. And with that, they can be individual, they can be group, et cetera, et cetera. Then going on to your more traditional internships, of course, those can be part-time, full-time, co-op, more structured, a lot more structure around how co-op to get the co-op distinction. And then of course, apprenticeships, lots of gray area between, a lot of overlap in between, but I definitely think it's best for folks to think through that there's a full spectrum here of experiential learning. And then within that, work integrated learning and work-based learning as you increase intensity and go more into the workforce as opposed to more into the education space, if that makes sense.
That's a useful buffet of experiential learning options, whether you want a bite or a whole meal. I guess we've talked about some of the benefits. You were talking about resilience and confidence and engagement. And what do you see, and when you're working with institutions who are trying to embrace work-based learning or experiential learning, what are the benefits that they're looking for from these programs and projects?
Yeah. I do think one of the things that we're hearing more and more is how do we increase engagement in learning? And I think that even started before AI. I think that's now a real issue with AI and cognitive offloading and all the research that's coming out, and the challenges of students getting too dependent on AI and not really experiencing the friction in the learning. So I think student engagement, you can't really have student success without student engagement. If you're not really engaged, how can you get student success? So that's a big one. If you can really start to connect what you're learning to the real world, you can see how this applies and how they can actually have an impact out there that aligns with your purpose and your interests and your career interests. That's how you get engagement. And the light bulb starts to go off over and over again. And people go, I get why I'm learning this, or I'm excited about this, or changing my mind. Maybe I move into something else. So that would be a huge one. Ultimately, employment outcomes are a big driver here. We've seen a lot of articles come out about the ROI of higher education. We've seen a lot of research come out recently on internships being one of the number one highest impact, highest ROI experiences that a student can engage in throughout their education pathway to lead to increased earnings over their lifetime, landing their first job, being employed meaningfully versus underemployed. But the challenge with that model is that folks are realizing that model is very difficult to scale. So when it comes to this full buffet, as you described it, that's how you start to reach scale. That's how you reach students earlier on, which of course helps get them smaller, lower intensity experiences, which are much more scalable. But then those experiences, by investing in those earlier on, they're more likely to get the higher intensity ones.
Right. And they can ladder up. Yeah.
Ladder up. They've hit the first couple of ladders. And I think going back to what I was saying earlier, it also helps attract more employers because there's lots of employers who aren't ready for the full, most intensive type of experience, but if they can start with the lower intensity experience. So the project-based experience is a really good fit for that. It's a great way of thinking through how do we, rather than hiring the army of co-op advisors that some of these really big co-op schools have, let's empower our faculty. We've got faculty members who our students trust or engaged in their courses. Let's empower our faculty members. Let's offer them the support to bring these kinds of experiences in. Let's empower these experiential learning coordinators and directors and managers or work-based learning managers, or all these roles, one of the fastest growing roles I think we're seeing in higher ed today. Let's empower them so that with tools that they can support many faculty members who each of those faculty members reaches many. So it's like this massive one-to-many strategy that builds exponentially. That's how you can scale these super cost effectively across your institution.
The scale piece makes a ton of sense to me. In the book, I talk about the goal is how do you move from what happens on many campuses where experiential learning is this ad hoc thing based on one-off relationships of a faculty member at the business school knows a company in the community, to something that you can sustainably scale up. So it goes from something you do to something you are.
Yeah.
And I think having a partner like you all seems like it would be super helpful, because then instead of reinventing, like, I'm sure you know how to scope a project, right? And really clearly communicate the deliverables and the process and the outcome in a way where a faculty member is doing it for the first time, or a company that's doing it for the first time might not know the right questions to ask or things to specify or whatever.
That's exactly right. The technology is really powerful. Technology removes friction in the right places because, of course, there is friction in learning that we want to
Some
keep.
friction is good. Hard
Some
things are
that
good for you.
Yeah, we want to remove the administrative burdens, the repetitive, tedious tasks that people have to do over and over again. The technology can really streamline that, but it's the humans behind it, both the humans at Riipen who are sharing best practices that we've learned, our knowledge, our expertise on a regular basis because we're talking to folks, we're watching them discover new ways of doing things, collecting their feedback, collecting their advice. There's the people behind the community. So often our platform is a place where, hey, I'm teaching this kind of course. I'm interested in talking to other faculty members who teach a similar course. Can you introduce me? Boom, absolutely. You can find them themselves. You can actually go into our open marketplace. You can find them yourself. You can meet them on the platform. There's a community where you can connect with one another. And then, of course, it's empowering the people at the institution themselves who are going to be helping support, run this, and manage that. And what schools are really digging into these days is, I think the most common thing that we hear is that, hey, just to your point earlier, it's like, I know this is happening on campus. And I know there's a faculty member in business who has some really good connections in industry and they're running this. And I think there's this faculty member in engineering and they're doing something. But the challenge is, like, most institutions, they say, I know this is happening, but I don't know where. I don't know if students are engaging with which organizations. I don't know how well our students are doing. I don't know what the students are getting out of it. I don't know what skills are being validated, what feedback is coming back from industry. And we asked them, how much better off would you be if you had that kind of information at your fingertips to make better data-driven decisions, to have those feedback loops that would help you with your strategic planning, with better understanding how we might market and promote what differentiates us and what our students are getting out of the programming here to prospective students. How might we use that to adapt our courses and the projects they're doing as part of these courses to ensure that it's aligned with industry and aligned with our students' career interests and their motivations and setting them up for success. And so the biggest trend that we're seeing is not just like, how do we scale this, but how do we track it? How do we measure it? How do we continuously improve based off of that data? And how do we make better data-driven decisions? Because we have all that access to that feedback loop that's coming very quickly and very regularly. What we often talk about is, again, it's never an either or, but the benefit of projects and industry in the curriculum and creating those stronger partnerships compared to industry advisory board is that feedback is getting to that educator directly throughout the entire course. And so you have to wait for course design and industry advisory boards, and you can still run that same sequence, but let's get the feedback coming continuously course after course, and let's have that feedback bubble up and that information help guide decisions that we're making at the institution.
That's really great. It's not just the scale, it's sustaining the scale through feedback and analytics and reporting and improvement. And in our last few minutes here, I know we're trying to hit a moving target, right? Because the world of work and the world of learning both are changing as you try and knit the two together. And you mentioned AI. I think for a long time, we've seen the sort of the impossible entry-level job description, right? Where it's like an entry-level job description that asks for 5 years of experience, and it's a real head scratcher. And now we're seeing all this reporting, Burning Glass and others, about what a tough job market it is with AI taking entry-level jobs. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on how we hit that moving target, like whether it's AI or like what are the other things that are changing experiential learning, and what's your best advice for institutions to respond?
Yeah, I think it's never been more important than ever to be developing learners who are engaged, who know how to learn, unlearn, relearn, because that is going to be the future of work. And it's already become that, but it's going to become that even more rapidly. Folks are going to have to learn and have more different careers, career transition, or have to develop skills at a faster pace of skills that we haven't even heard of yet. And so if you think about it that way, then I think what's really important is developing learning experiences where students are put into these challenges where there's no right or wrong answer. I can't just take the problem set, dump it into AI, have it spit something back out to me, copy paste that in and submit it. Or worse, have an AI agent just go through my LMS and complete my assignments for me. AI cannot do your work-based learning, project-based learning, authentic live engagement project for you. It's just not going to happen. You've got to meet with this organization. You've got to ask with curiosity, ask great questions. You've got to listen carefully with empathy. You've got to understand those. You've got to repeat them back to them. Ask for confirmation. You've got to come back and think critically and problem solve and think creatively and come up with some ideas. And of course, AI can be an amplifier to those human skills that are being developed, those durable skills that are being developed through that. You got to work with your team and conflict around the conflict resolution around, here's my idea. Oh, here we came up with this way. Then you're going to present that to the company. And let's be honest, first reaction, it could very well be, and it's very often is, hey, like where you're going with this, but that's not what I had in mind. And so you've got to be ready to be able to take that kind of feedback, respond well to it, adjust, adapt. And so if you think about, if we're trying to prepare learners for this future that is ever changing, rapidly evolving, then what better way than to put them into these learning experiences where it forces them to think through rapid change and dealing with forced ambiguity and uncertainty. There's no right or wrong answer. And you can absolutely be leveraging AI and developing those skills, but there's no way you can just offload that and have the AI or the machines do that work for you. It just wouldn't get the same. There's too much human interaction that is needed in that kind of experience, just like there's too much human interaction that's needed in the roles that will be needed, that will be in high demand in the future.
That's a great point. And I think, these experiences have never been more important. And it's for learning the skills and building the relationships and responding to feedback and learning to learn and all the things you're saying. And it just makes so much sense. And I appreciate all the work you're doing to close that gap between supply and demand for experiential learning to enable student success. So thank you, Dana.
Thank you. Really appreciate the time. I really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to many more conversations about this rapidly evolving space.
Thanks for listening to the Connected College podcast. Subscribe to my Connected College newsletter at elliottfelix.com for insights and excerpts from my upcoming book, tools you can download, and special offers. You can also find more information about talks I've given, articles I've written, and upcoming events there. And please support the podcast by rating and reviewing it wherever you're listening. Let's create connected colleges where students will succeed.